The dust had settled thick over everything that morning, and Samuel Henderson knew it would be another scorching day on his small ranch outside of Cedar Creek. He had lived on this land for 37 years now, ever since he returned from the war with a limp and a heart full of quiet determination to build something peaceful, something good. The coffee was still steaming in his tin cup when he heard the sound that would change everything. It was barely a whisper at first, like the wind through the mesquite, but as he stepped out onto his weathered porch, he realized it was a voice. A woman's voice calling out in distress. Samuel set down his cup and walked slowly toward the sound, his boots crunching softly on the dry earth behind. His small barn near the old water well, he found her. She was crouched in the shadow of the wooden structure, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if she could somehow disappear. Her clothes were torn and stained with dirt, and what looked like dried blood. Her long brown hair hung in tangled strands across her face, hiding her features. When she heard his footsteps, she pressed herself deeper into the shadows. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling like a wounded bird. "Don't look at me." Samuel stopped where he was, about 10 feet away. His weathered hands hung loose at his sides, and his voice when he spoke was as gentle as morning rain. "Ma'am, I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Samuel Henderson, and this is my ranch. You're safe here." She shook, her head violently, still keeping her face hidden. She said, and her voice cracked with pain, both physical and something deeper. "You don't understand. I'm not safe anywhere. Nobody should look at me. Not anymore." Samuel had seen enough pain in his 62 years to recognize it in all its forms. He had carried his own share of it back from the battlefields of his youth. He knew that sometimes the deepest wounds were the ones that couldn't be seen. "Very well," he said quietly. "I won't look directly at you, if that makes you feel safer, but I can't just leave you here. You're hurt and you need help. Would you let me bring you some water at least?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice so soft he almost missed it, she said, "Why would you help someone like me?" Samuel lowered himself carefully onto an old wooden crate about 8 feet away. He kept his gaze fixed on the horizon beyond her, avoiding her face as he had promised, because he said that's what people do for each other. At least that's what they should do. "My Martha always said that kindness isn't something you do because someone deserves it. It's something you do because you're human." She was quiet again, and Samuel could hear her trying to control her breathing. "Is Martha your wife?" "She asked finally," was Samuel said, and his voice carried the weight of old grief. "She passed on 5 years ago this November. Cancer took her. But not before she taught me that the hardest times in life are when we need each other the most. I'll get you that water now," he said, standing slowly, "and maybe some food if you're hungry. I make a decent stew. Nothing fancy, but it fills the belly." When he returned 20 minutes later with a tin cup of cool well water and a bowl of yesterday's beef stew, she was still huddled in the same spot. He set them down within her reach and retreated to his crate. "Thank you," she whispered. Her hands, when she reached for the water, were shaking badly. Samuel noticed the angry red marks around her wrists, but he didn't comment. Some truths revealed themselves in their own time as she drank. He began talking in that easy, rambling way that came natural to folks who spent a lot of time alone. "This ranch isn't much," he said, "just 20 acres and a few head of cattle. But it's peaceful. Here gets mighty quiet sometimes, but that's not always a bad thing. Quiet gives a person room to heal, to think. After Martha died, I spent a lot of time just sitting out here listening to the wind. Took me a while to realize that the quiet wasn't empty. It was full of possibilities." The woman had finished the water and was picking at the stew with trembling fingers. "What kind of possibilities?" she asked. "All kinds," Samuel said. "The possibility that tomorrow might be a little easier than today. The possibility that kindness still exists in this world even when it seems like it doesn't. The possibility that broken things can be mended if you're patient enough." She ate in silence for several minutes. Samuel watched a hawk circling high overhead and listened to the gentle lowing of his cattle in the distance. Finally, she spoke again. "My name is Elizabeth," she said. "Elizabeth Morgan. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Elizabeth?" Samuel said, "That's a fine name. My grandmother was an Elizabeth, strongest woman I ever knew. Aside from my Martha, Elizabeth finished the stew and set the bowl down carefully. Mr. Henderson, she said, I need to tell you something about why I'm here, about what happened to me. You don't need to tell me anything. You don't want to. Elizabeth, Samuel said gently, but if talking helps, then I'm willing to listen. I've got nowhere else to be and all the time in the world. She took a shaky breath. 3 days ago, she began, I was traveling with a small wagon train from El Paso. We were heading to California. Husband died last year and I thought maybe a fresh start would help. On the second day, we were attacked. Samuel felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. That's a hard thing to survive. Most of the others, Elizabeth continued, her voice growing stronger. They were killed. The men who attacked us, they took some of the women. Including me. Samuel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he was still looking at the horizon. Go on, he said quietly. They kept us for 2 days, Elizabeth said. Did terrible things when I finally managed to escape yesterday. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran until I couldn't run anymore. That's when I found your ranch. Samuel was quiet for a long time. The wind rustled through the mesquite, and somewhere in the distance a meadowlark sang its liquid song. Elizabeth, he said finally, what those men did to you, that doesn't change who you are. It doesn't make you less worthy of kindness or respect or peace, but you don't understand, she said. And now there were tears in her voice. You haven't seen what they did to my face, what I look like now. Samuel turned then very slowly until he was facing her direction, but he kept his eyes closed. Elizabeth, he said, I'm going to tell you something that Martha taught me. She said that a person's worth isn't written on their face. It's written in their heart. And from what I can tell, your heart is strong and brave. You survived something terrible. You escaped. You're still here, still fighting. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. He opened his eyes then and looked directly at her. Elizabeth's face bore the marks of violence. Bruises in various stages of healing painted her skin in shades of purple and yellow. There was a long cut across her left cheek that would likely leave a scar. Her right eye was still swollen nearly shut. But what Samuel saw most clearly was the fear in her good eye, the way she flinched when his gaze met hers, the way she instinctively tried to turn away. You're looking at me, she whispered. Yes, Samuel said simply, I am. And I see a woman who has been through hell and came out the other side. I see someone who was strong enough to survive, strong enough to keep going when giving up would have been easier. That's what I see, Elizabeth. She stared at him for a long moment as if trying to understand how he could look at her damaged face without horror or disgust. Why, she asked, why aren't you turning away? Samuel smiled, then a gentle expression that reached his eyes. Because Martha taught me to look deeper, he said. She used to say that if you only see the surface of things, you miss all the important parts. The surface heals, Elizabeth. Always remember that. It's what's underneath that matters, and what's underneath in you is still whole. Elizabeth began to cry then, not the quiet tears she had been holding back, but deep wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere far inside her. Samuel wanted to comfort her, to offer some physical gesture of support. But he sensed that she wasn't ready for that kind of contact. Instead, he just sat there patient as stone while she let the grief and trauma pour out of her. When the tears finally subsided, she wiped her face with the back of her hand. I don't know what to do now, she said. Where to go? What becomes of someone like me? Samuel stood and walked over to his well. He drew up a bucket of fresh water and brought it back along with a clean cloth from his pocket. Here, he said, setting them near her. Why don't you clean up a bit? Then we can figure out what comes next. Elizabeth looked at him suspiciously. You're not going to. You're not expecting anything in return. Samuel shook his head. Elizabeth, the only thing I'm expecting is that you'll let me help you heal. That's what neighbors do. And right now, that's what we are. Neighbors. She used the water and cloth to wash her face and hands. The cool water seemed to give her strength. When she was done, she looked up at Samuel with something that might have been the beginning of hope. What did you have in mind? She asked. Well, Samuel said, I've got a spare room in the house. It's not much, just a bed and a washstand, but it's clean and private. You could stay there as long as you need to, help around the ranch if you feel up to it, or just rest and heal. Whatever you need. Elizabeth stared at him. You would do that, she said. For a stranger. For someone who has been. Samuel held up a hand gently. Elizabeth, he said. What happened to you doesn't define you. It's something that was done to you, not something you did. And yes, I would do this for you because it's the right thing to do, and because I have a feeling that Martha would have my hide if I did anything else. Despite everything. Elizabeth smiled then, just a small expression. But it transformed. Her battered face, your Martha sounds like she was a special woman. She was, Samuel said, and she would have liked you. I can tell. Elizabeth stood slowly, testing her balance. Her legs were shaky, but she managed to stop.